introduce what we got at the table. Go ahead, sis.
Come on. I am like super excited about these two amazing women who are at the table. They've been in my life now for over a decade. And I've been able to firsthand see the narrative of God unfold in their lives. And when I first met Tracy, she was working at Martin Luther King Park here in the city of Long Beach and really invited the church to do some collaborative work in serving the community. And we were excited to do it. Had no idea that God was weaving our hearts together and that there was a bigger story that was underway. And so it's been a beautiful journey to also see her daughter Lupita, who is with us today. When she came, she was a baby girl. Now she's una reina. She's a chula. She's a smart queen, beautiful, intelligent woman. And we're so proud of seeing this journey of strong boss mama who is an incredible leader in our city. And today we're going to get to learn a little about what it means to not only be a great influencer, like a real influencer. Like you're an influencer when you're affecting change, not when you're just having a lot of followers.
Okay, say it. Uh-oh.
So this woman's an influencer because she's affecting change in our city. And now we'll get to hear about what she's doing now, which is incredible. But Tracy, we want to hear from you first, and then we're going to also hear from Lupita. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey just as a woman in working in the city, in the public sector? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting us to be here to share our stories, both of you. I have to take it way, way back. I'm a girl from the hood. I grew up outside of Chicago, and I didn't know anybody who had ever went to college. And so my mom said from like the time I was 5 on, I was like, Mommy, I'm going to college. I don't even know where I got that dream, but I was the first in my family out of 34 cousins to go to college. And I remember I was like the angel of the family. Everybody was so excited for me. In my senior year, I got pregnant by my college boyfriend. We had been together 2 years, and I got pregnant. We ended up breaking up when I was 5 months pregnant, and I literally had to figure out how to grow up quickly to navigate my life, and I was adamant that I was going to finish my bachelor's degree. And so I gave birth to this beautiful Lupita in March, and I walked my graduation ceremony in May.
Wow, sis.
So, and it didn't stop there. I always had this dream to go to graduate school. So in college, that's when I got exposed to graduate school, master's, doctorate. I remember my grandma, my abuela, was like, don't you already have 1 degree? I don't understand why you have to go back to college, And so I got accepted to UCLA Luskin School for my master's degree. So me and my 2.5-year-old Lupita traveled across the country in a U-Haul with my mom and stepdad so that I could go to UCLA. And I'm telling you, God opened every door. We lived in family student housing. She went to one of the best childcare programs in the country at UCLA. I got a full ride stipend. It was a phenomenal experience. And I saw God open door after door after door. So I just want to set that stage. So as you hear about how God has unfolded in my life, like just know at my heart, I'm just a girl from the hood.
I love that. I love that fact that we can hear that part of your story because it inspires so many of us, right? I love when the strength in women who have gone through real challenging seasons doesn't serve as an excuse to not pursue your goals and dreams, but you still begin the journey that is hard and it requires grit. So for all our sisters who are watching, who will find themselves with babies or struggling and financially in the challenges that life brings, like don't give up on your dreams, don't give up on your goals, right? So what a gift that is. Lupita, tell us a little bit about your education journey, because I think it's beautiful just to see how that has unfolded as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of crazy. Our stories are very much intertwined. And so growing up in our household, it was always about education, and naturally, too, that's something that was in the household. I love to read, and so, yeah, it was kind of a crazy journey. In college, I decided to move to New York to pursue my degree in bachelor's in psychology, and I'm grateful for my mom to give me the opportunity to go and be myself, to discover myself and who I am as a woman, and even just, as a person. And in that journey, I grew so much. But of course, because of the pandemic, I moved back home. I finished college, was out there for a bit, move back home and just trying to figure out my next steps. And I had decided, at first I was very adamant about, like, I didn't want to do a master's in social work. That's what my mom did. I want to be my own person. And the more I began to discover the gifts God had given me, the more I realized how much they were in line with, very similar to what she pursued. So right now I'm pursuing my master's in social work. But I think that kind of leads into how very different we are. I would say my mom is a powerhouse. She's in those public spaces. I'm definitely a more quiet person. And I think that's something that's been so integral to our story is me having to navigate, how do I become my own woman, my own person in her reputation and in her sphere? And we've had plenty of conversations about that. We couldn't be any more different. But we also complement each other so well in that, I feel like my time as a leader is learning how to be bold, learning how to find my voice. And we've had conversations as well about what does that mean for her to be a leader. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Lupita. Well, for the last 16 years, I've worked for the city of Long Beach, and I've, risen through the ranks, of course, because of God's hand on my life. But recently, I accepted a position with the Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation as their director of civic engagement. And not only will be influencing the city of Long Beach, but cities around the country and around the world. And for a majority of my career, I have found myself as the only Latina in the room, really advocating for our communities, for our people, unabashedly like speaking up on behalf of our community, of course, with love and kindness, but just not being afraid in the boardroom, at city council, in director meetings. And so it's so wild because I am such a strong personality. The other day I had to describe myself in a team meeting. I was like, I'm gregarious. I'm larger than life. I'm crazy. I'm loud. And so I think with Lupita, it's so wild, just like when we have these conversations when we're sitting on the couch at home and I'm sharing with her about some dynamic meeting that I'm in and, how we want to expand the work that we're doing or who I'm in the meetings with, she always comes with such wisdom and insight, right? So if I'm gregarious and larger than life, she's like this, she's very quiet, but she's paying attention to every single detail. And then she just slides in some wisdom. And I'm like, dang, how does my 24-year-old daughter just drop the mic on me? And I agree with what she said. Like, she has the skill to read a room and understand what's going on, where I'm too busy, like, with these God-sized dreams, figuring out, like, how are we going to move these big kingdom pieces? And she's like, Mom, slow your roll because, you got to be careful about this and that, or have wisdom in moving forward. And I think in our differences, like, it's really bonded us together. I think more than any other woman in this world, she has the ability to speak life into me, but she also has the ability to check me. So when I'm acting a little too out there or acting a fool, she like has permission in my life to be like, Mom, I think there's a nicer way you could have said that.
I kind of want to touch upon that too, just this dynamic of like, she's not doing leadership in a very public platform. A lot of my leadership has been what I call quiet leadership, more on the down low, that's not on display for everybody to see. And I'm wanting to kind of speak into that because leadership is not just for the platform.
Right.
Leadership is also in the home, in your workplace. It's not just confined to that. And so that's something that we have talked about a lot, that you don't need to be on a platform to be leading others. Another aspect that I am kind of learning in this season of my life is humility in leadership and recognizing, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake and I'm learning, not only just privately, but also publicly.
So Tracy, you said Lupita will check you when you start getting a little bit too out there, and she'll slide some wisdom in. So Lupita, when has your mom gotten a little out there where you've had to pull her back?
Oh, wow.
When or how many times a day?
That's the true question.
I love it.
Probably even in my own relationship, a lot of what I think about back is in high school, and that she had so many expectations and drive for me. But I had to be like, Mom, I need my space. I'm my own person. I have to navigate this myself. Will you give me that space? And I think that's what's been so pivotal to our relationship is that she allowed me to explore who I am apart from her.
That's so good.
Apart from her. And then in our adult relationship, it has been so beautiful to see how we complement each other in the way she challenges me to be bold in spaces, but where I also can provide some leadership counsel when it comes to emotional intelligence and things of that sort.
Emotional intelligence, that's a word. Now, Tracy, I know that your leadership journey has been shaped a lot by men. You have had to walk into boardrooms, walk into leadership circles, and be the only woman, be the only Latina. And so you've had to learn a different way of leading that you were kind of forced into. How are you balancing basically being in a world where you've had to kind of shift and accommodate that type of leadership, but also teaching your daughter a new way to lead, a way that brings her femininity to the table, that brings her quiet leadership to the table? How do you reconcile that?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, first, I want to thank all the men who've invested in me, because quite frankly, it has been men that have opened many doors for me. You know, Mayor Robert Garcia, John Keisler, the economic development director, Pat West, our former city manager. If I was to look back over the last 20 years of my life, it's actually been men who've like reached back and pulled me to the boardroom table and even said, Tracy, what's your opinion on this project? I think it was, it started at King Park where I I worked hard, that grit. I've never lost it, but it was that hard work ethic that, opened that door for me to have a seat at the table. So I want to make sure and thank the men in my life who've always supported me, especially my husband. So to the ladies listening, if there are, gentlemen, of course, appropriately investing in you professionally because they want to uplift you, say yes. And then if there are women in your life who you're looking up to, but you're intimidated by them, ask them to coach and mentor you. Because what I've seen over the years is there's a lot of young women I meet and they're so intimidated by me. And to be quite frank, like I want to treat them like my Lupita, like you're my goddaughter, you're my daughter, I will inherit you and you can journey with us as my goddaughter and as Lupita's sister. I think for Lupita, going back to your question, is it's just been this very like natural progression in our relationship where, in the home, I've been able to model, like I'm a strong woman. Like my career is very important in our home. And my husband, who is an amazing school teacher and English teacher, and he loves his students, but he really has been the primary caretaker of our children. And so what Lupita has witnessed is a balanced home where I call it a strengths-based home, where whatever strength you bring, that's what you do. If you're good at the dishes, which my husband is, and the laundry, he handles that, and I handle the budgets. So my daughter has actually seen modeled for her that a woman is not defined by a certain set of roles or characteristics, but like you as an individual, as a human being, what gifts and talents do you bring to the table, do you bring to the home, and you shine in those. And so it's so interesting because I don't even know if we really talk about gender identity and who's supposed to do what more than my husband and I just model it in our home.
That's interesting. So you would say leadership isn't defined by these characteristics, whether feminine or masculine, but by your gifts. So you're just breaking it down to that space. You also said that men have carried you forward. So the name of this whole series is Carry Her Forward. And so in your case, it's been men who have carried you forward. One of the other things I want to address is we have this multi-generational dynamic here. Yeah. And I know some of our youth workers might not have had strong women leaders, might not have had strong mothers, might not have had strong role models, but some of them have. Some of them have had women leaders in their life, whether it be their mother or their pastor or whoever, that are very strong, almost to the point of dominating, almost to the point of suffocating, almost to the point of, I don't think that I can measure up. I don't think that I can live up to the standard of your leadership because everybody thinks you're so dope. I think you're dope, but I don't know how to sit in the shadow of your dopeness, and I actually don't want to be in your shadow. So what happens, Lupita, when you have a mom like your mom.
Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
have these moments because I know you've had them because we're friends. We talk,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yes, yes,
and you've
yes, yes.
navigated this. Talk to the people.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of your like reputation, right? She's really well known in the city, and I think what I've learned is I have to create my own world where I am my own Guadalupe, where I lead, where my strengths are, and a lot of that has been in kind of small group kind of leadings, and right now I'm currently leading a women's group right now. But what I have found when it comes to leadership is this idea of humility and honesty. And I think people respect you when you're honest about where you're at and apologizing, making mistakes. But it also allows people to recognize that you're human in trying to decide these different things, and not just only privately, but also publicly. There's a huge cancel culture. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've had a huge dynamic shift in terms of what it means to really be leadership, especially because of these platforms, of a lot of these conversations, and even challenging some of the very notions that we talk about when it comes to leadership. But this idea that our society values leadership on this platform. And I think us as leaders, we are not more important, more valuable than the people who are doing a lot of the groundwork and recognizing the value in everybody's role. We just so happen to be able to kind of help facilitate that. And so I've been able to kind of do that in my work, in our family life. And I would love for you to talk about that family dynamic of leadership, but also in my sphere of influence. It's not just confined to, public spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a theme that we're finding with this generation, your generation, is that leadership is very much like in the home, it's at the coffee shop, it's on social media, it's with your friends. It's not necessarily a position that they're trying to attain. It's more of a person they're trying to be. And I think that is a generational shift. That's the whole thing about being an influencer, right? But as Noemi said, being an influencer isn't about your followers or fans. It really is about what you're doing. So I think the balance of having people following you, having people learning from you, but also doing the work. Like you said, the people on the ground doing the work. Like what it was funny because I was at this influencer event and I asked these influencers, these kids, I was like, so what do you influence? And then they started laughing. I was like, what do you influence? I really wanted to know.
Yeah.
They had a platform, but I don't think they had a cause. I don't know if they had a purpose. What's the mission? Like, I feel like all these things have to be answered. I think it's the both and.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's beautiful the fact that the way that Tracy is wired in her strengths. And I can't say, oh, you're strong and she's quiet. No, I think there's two strong women here. And they just look completely different. And that mutual respect is so valuable that you're modeling that, because I think oftentimes, whether it's the daughter or the mother, could have these expectations, one of the other, that are not healthy, that are unrealistic, and that are not even lined up to how you're wired or how God created you. And there seems to be such a mutual respect because I've hung out with you, Tracy, and you can't stop talking about Lupita and how proud you are of her, and because you see how she is and who she is and how she's wired as a strength and something to be celebrated and something beautiful. So not every apparent powerhouse, raises powerhouses that look just like her. So she is a powerhouse. It just looks completely different. And that respect gives her breathing space to see that, develop in her life. And it's still she's young. There's still a lot more it's going to.
Absolutely. Well, and I would even say that it speaks into the diversity of women, right? We all comes in different shapes and sizes. And so being a woman as her is very different than the way that I define it and embody it.
Embody it. I love that. You said you're larger than life. So is Lupita in her own way. She's larger than life and embodies it in a different way. And that's okay, in giving each other space to do that. I think as women in general, whether mother and daughter or whatever, I think we have to give women space to be all of who they are and to embody their leadership the way they embody it and how they lead, to affirm that. I think oftentimes, again, if you've bought into this idea that leadership only looks this way, then you start to judge, right? You start to say, well, that's a leader and that's not a leader. And that's unfortunate because there's diversity even in leadership. And the world needs more leaders, especially today. We need a lot of leadership, really healthy, excellent, dynamic leadership in all forms. So I see that in both of you. I know you both, and I'm getting to know you more. But I see you're both leaders, obviously. You're both educated. You're both visionaries. You both embody leadership in such a beautiful way in your own spaces. And I think watching the dynamic and the respect, even within the family, is mind-blowing. That's why I wanted to have you guys on this podcast. So, Naomi?
Just one more thing as we wrap up. I think I just really want to encourage all of the women who are leading, especially our urban youth workers, right?
Yeah.
You're leading young girls who are coming from so many different backgrounds. And there may be some girls who have felt like their voice is being suffocated, their DNA and how they're wired. I think this is a beautiful model of you as a strong youth worker, finding ways to applaud, celebrate how God created these young girls. And some of them will be the artists, some of them will be the speakers, some of them will be the entrepreneur, some of them will be the one that is creatively finding ways to share the gospel with friends. All of these young girls in our youth groups are so different one from the other. And so how beautiful it is that God gives shepherds the opportunity to see these beautiful stories unfold and see the best version of these young girls come through. It's a gift that God gives us. So be encouraged I want to just tell these women, like, be encouraged as you lead. And for some of them, you are their mom. You are the mom figure who's modeling how to be a woman and how to be strong and how to pursue your goals and your dreams. And it's all a picture of the kingdom and how good is God that the church gets to be all these things for our communities.
Can I speak into that, if I may? Because as you're talking, that's what I'm thinking. To speak to people who are mentoring or coaching that younger generation, I would say one thing is that I've given Lupita the permission to tell me, like, when I'm being too bossy or I'm encroaching on her space. Like, we have a few, like, signal words that we use with each other that's like, Mom, chill, back off, let me do this. And I'm like, okay. And so there's also this mutual respect as the elder woman that I have to give her space to make decisions, whether they be financial or otherwise, and being loving and supportive and letting her learn her lessons and, loving her through it, but not micromanaging or controlling. So that's one, piece of advice that I would give for women who are coaching and leading the, younger women. The other one, this really stood out to me. I was watching the movie Dune, and the B'Gesserit, which is like the priesthood of women, said that, I remember there's a scene where she's the one high priest says, we don't measure success in a person. We measure success over millenniums.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, when I heard that, it was like God just dropped the bomb in my spirit, that we don't measure our success just with these generational curses that have been broken over my daughter and my son around poverty and abuse and lack of education, that it's not just about them, it's about my children's children. It's about the children in the Revive family, in the kingdom. We're breaking generational curses, not just for the Kolunga family, but for any other family that we are a part of their life, to love on them. So that's what I would encourage our coaches and mentors and leaders to think about, that this is like, we count our success in thousands of years, in hundreds of years. I don't even think our minds can understand what I'm saying, but I think our spirit women know that this is long game. This isn't just short game, this is long game, so that my daughter's children's children will live in freedom.
Come on. I know this is getting longer than we wanted it to, but curses, the Bible talks about last to third and fourth generation. But the blessing goes up to 1,000 generations. And so this is the blessing of God, right? Like, that's what we need to invest in, as far as like giving God and understanding what it means for us to be God-centered women, right? Because the things that we've gone through, or our predecessors, our grandparents, uncles have gone through, the things that have been done to us, that's not a part of the future generation or the generations to come. The blessing of God goes farther than any curse has ever gone. And that's a powerful truth that we need to hold on to.
And sorry, just to add, like, I think that's what we see in our story, is to see how she has broken those generational curses and how I've been able to step up and live in freedom and be able to lead in even a greater capacity than what I could have ever imagined. And that it doesn't just end with me, but it ends with the women that I'm pouring into and into my children, into the generations, and seeing beyond the now, but the legacy.
Come on.
Definitely. That's awesome. So to wrap this up, carry her forward. What I'm hearing right now is a few things. One, there's diversity in leadership. So make sure you're not canceling anybody that's different than you. Carry her, every single one of hers, forward.
Amen.
And then I'm hearing that when we carry her forward, it's not just for right now, it's for future generations.
Yeah.
So her goes for centuries, right? Like until whatever God decides to go ahead and shut this thing down and make heaven and earth be the thing. But I think I'm hearing that eternal purpose there. I also am hearing that we aren't to try to make little mini me's. We're not here to build dominions. We're here to build communities of women and empower women and not dominate women. So I love where this has gone. I love that this carrying her forward has now a very strong call to action here. So thank you guys so much for giving us this wisdom. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for being on our podcast. Peace.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies, are you looking to level up your leadership? Well, we want you to check out UYWI's Next Level Leadership Coaching. It is available to you. We will match you with a one-on-one coach. For more information, go ahead and check out our website at UYWI.org.